What the idea was behind quantum is, after a short introduction, to now show you also the value chain, how quantum is happening from a company that's building the machines, the hardware, then there's the middleware layer that's not so existing in classical computing, and then we have two companies from the software space and also the application space that are already commercializing today. So I'm waiting for the next guest to come on stage. I'll be here, yeah?
I think you were.
Oh, I thought we were matching.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. You have to fix it, the pictures that they fit to the faces, okay? That's great to have you all. I would say I got a quick introduction. Maybe we go, and that's why we lined up by the right order of the value chain. Maybe you say a bit what you're doing, and in a few sentences, and introduce yourself. Sebastian, go first.
Sure. Hi, Sebastian Weidt, CEO, co-founder of Universal Quantum. I'm also a professor in quantum computing and entrepreneurship. Universal Quantum builds trapped ion quantum computers. We focus on solving the million qubit challenge. You've heard a little bit in the introduction already, so really focusing on unlocking those high impact applications. We're a UK-based company. We've got operations in Germany and the US. Attracted around $100 million so far, most of that actually in contracts, so we're very much revenue driven, and if I can just put a little technology thing in there. So the reason we can solve this million qubit challenge is that we've got a very modular approach, and very recently actually demonstrated world record connections between individual quantum chips to really scale up. In a nutshell, it's the hardest problem really in quantum computing hardware, to be able to connect quantum computing chips together to make bigger machines. We've cracked that problem with, I think, 7/9 fidelity, very fast link. So that's our sort of secret sauce, so to speak. I'll leave it there. Maybe we get back to some of that later.
César,
Okay.
please.
Yeah. So I'm César. I'm the CEO and founder of Commutator Studios, and we're doing developer tools for programming quantum computers. Programming quantum computers is very different than programming traditional computer. And if you live with some image, imagine it's the difference between a train and an airplane. Train being, of course, classical computers, and airplanes being quantum computers. And the same physics that allow the airplanes to fly, of course, leads to turbulence, storms, and this is stuff the pilot has to manage. And it's the same with a quantum computer, that developers have to always be aware that there's quantum errors, that just the same stuff that makes them so powerful makes them very prone to them, and you have to think about how to do it. And this requires new kinds of developer tools to optimize your applications. Our company is based in Germany.
And I'm Christina. I'm head of products and strategy at Kvantify, a quantum computing software company. We really believe the best solution in the future is a mix of classical and quantum algorithms. So we work on both sides of that, but for the purpose of reaping the benefits of quantum computing as the hardware matures. I think that's me in brief.
Well, nice to meet you all. Very excited to be here. My name is Marta Garcia, and I'm the CFO of Multiverse Computing. We are placed at the end of the value chain, right? Because we're closer to the customer. We build this software for the applications, for the customer's problems. And we use two technologies, obviously quantum, but we also use this hybrid approach, which is quantum inspired. These algorithms that mimic a quantum state but run on classical hardware, that are more efficient than just traditional. They require 80 times less data, so obviously a huge advantage to just traditional. We are a team of 150 employees across the different offices that we have, headquarters in Spain. And we were born in finance, but we are huge now in energy, manufacturing, defense, and cybersecurity. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Sebastian, you just mentioned a few achievements you have done with Universal Quantum, but what do you think, number one, are the biggest challenges for you to develop such a machine? And then, of course, we hear always about future potential, the long moonshots. I will ask all of you at the end as well, but what is the reality maybe today? Because that's the major question. Nobody questions the potential of quantum. Everyone questions, when does it come? what is the reality, and maybe the gap between the vision and today's world.
Yeah, sure. I think there's actually even disagreements on the vision to some extent, right? So I think if you follow the scientific approach, so to speak, then I think we have a very good understanding of the amazing potential of quantum computing, and we also roughly know, nothing else changing, when that may come in. And this is where these large number of qubits come in. We eventually have to get to that sort of scale. Where a lot of work is being done right now, and also by people on the panel, is to see what we can do in that journey to those sort of large-scale systems. So what can we do right now with quantum computers that we have, and what can we do as years progress and these machines do scale up? I think the thing I just definitely want to make is that scaling part that we talk about doesn't happen automatically. And I think if you look at quantum computing as a sector right now on the hardware side, I think people are really struggling with scaling up these machines. I think if everyone could, and there's big players out there, the large multinational companies that have investments in quantum, money necessarily isn't an issue for them, but they're really struggling to push up these qubit numbers. And I think this is why I still pose this as a challenge to get up to these large number of qubits, and why we really focus on that, because we know the ultimate value will come out of solving that. That journey to get to that, it is an important one, because the last thing we want to do is have to wait that long until we can get utility out of these machines. And I think we're seeing really interesting things that I think over the next couple of years will start to really create some value as we go along that journey. Just always remember what the ultimate goal must be, right? If someone with a 100 or 200 qubit system gets something interesting out of it, you as a customer, no doubt, will immediately be like, okay, now I want more. I want this to be faster. I want to have even more capabilities. So you will need more qubits. It's an inevitability that you have to push that sort of number up. And I think this is why it's important that we have hardware approaches out there that can deliver that long-term vision. In terms of the challenges, I think, well, everyone would probably always say there's some money component associated to that. Where in Europe, it's not quite as this sort of environment that we maybe have in America. I think one of the great things we have in Europe is we've got the amazing talent, and you'll hear that later on here as well. We've got a great academic foundation in Europe, and we're building startups built on that. But I think what we're often missing in Europe, and this is where it's great to have Redstone Ventures and others to try and support that sort of visionary drive forward, to make sure that Europe is one of the key players in quantum computing as we go forward. Because on this one, we really can't afford to miss the train. You do not want to leave that to other geopolitical players out there. That would be a big point. I don't know if that fully answered your question, but is that roughly
yes,
what you had in mind?
Okay. Thanks. César, you mentioned noise and errors before, right? Is this layer in classical computing, can you compare it? Is it only specifically for in the quantum world? Maybe you can say a few words also technically to that, and especially you are also tackling these issues. It would be great to have a bit of an introduction also into the error mitigation, error correction.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and this follows what Sebastian was saying about how difficult these computers are to scale. And the reason is it's literally the same physics that make quantum computers so powerful. Prevents us from doing some things that we take for granted. For example, a basic one is copying information. Copying information is the most basic operation you can do on information. This is very common in classical computing. In quantum, it's not possible due to the way the physics work. If you try to copy the information, you basically destroy it. So that means that the ways you try to manage errors in information, you cannot use the old ways, right? The old way is you copy the same information multiple times and you have them both, right? In quantum computing, you cannot do that. You have to come up with other ways to ensure the information and the operations stay correct. And to scale a quantum computer, you roughly need to be very good at 3 different areas. I like to think of them as 3 dimensions. One is the number of qubits, of course, but we're all made of atoms. We all have qubits in ourselves, but we're not very good quantum computers, each of us, right? And the reason is you need some other things as well. The other one is you need them to be very well connected. My qubits might not be connected in the best way to do quantum operations, for example, as a person. And the last one is you want them to be very, very good quality. And you can do trade-offs between all these. If 2 qubits are not talking to each other and they're not connected, maybe you use one in the middle as a messenger, and you sacrifice that one. Other ways is you can use many qubits to support each other to create like one big qubit that's more robust to noise, for example. And there's a lot of tricks that this happens at the development phase on how do you do this clever understanding of where are the errors and what are the kind of techniques you have to do to manage it. And really the image I want you to think is like if a classical computer is a train, it goes on rails, it's very simple. But the quantum computer is like an airplane. You need a radar. You need to be aware of the weather. You have to be constantly monitoring what's happening in the sky to reroute the airplane accordingly and make the flight more efficient. And this means it's fundamentally very, very different to be able to tackle these errors. There's, of course, a plethora of tools in that, and we are one of those, adding new kind of developer tools to enable that.
Sounds to me, is that like a layer? How do you work together with the software companies, with the machines? Like, are you cooperating, or are the machines themselves also looking into the error from the earliest beginning on?
Yes, absolutely. So we take this for granted in classical computing that there's a hardware and there's a software, but of course there's a lot of layers of software in between, right? Like there's a lot of chips to manage memory. It's just so mature we never think about them. We just take it for granted. In quantum, we're building it from scratch, so we have to be very, very aware. But ultimately, you don't want the pilot to have to invent the radar as it's flying, right? You don't want the pilot to have to come up with weather models as it's flying. So you need additional tools in the middle, and these tools enable people that are developing applications, for example, to understand the existing errors and limitations of each hardware, and then work around them, get the most power that they can out of them. This does require a lot of expertise in quantum physics. It does require a lot of expertise in programming, of course. But of course, each hardware has their own strengths and weaknesses, and each developer has to be very, very aware of that. So what we're trying to do really is make it easier so that not every person has to be expert on each different kind of hardware. It's a little bit like in game development that you have game engines so that you can deploy your game in the Xbox or the iPhone and it doesn't matter. You make the most out of it. So we're trying to do something like that. Mm-hmm.
Christina, with Kvantify, you're developing software for quantum computers, using quantum computers. How does the collaboration look like? Do you just hire a few software developers and then you build on the quantum stack, or how complicated is it in reality?
I think all of the players in the ecosystem are extremely important to push the usefulness of quantum computers in the future. As for collaborations, we have direct collaborations, but we also, to a large extent, exploit platforms such as AWS Bracket to access quantum hardware. The middle layer, we actually built that, the middleware layer, we actually built that ourselves at the moment because, as you said, César, it's so dependent on the hardware and the specifics of the hardware. So that means you need a lot of different talent in order to build the entire stack, you can say. But I think we'll see more collaborations with middleware players going forward as well, for sure.
And looking into your, let's say, employee and HR, so you have standard software developers, or is it quantum people that you have to hire? Or?
Actually, we need both.
Okay.
So we have quantum engineers, quantum physicists, we have software architects, everything in between, you can say, in order to build the best solution for the end user in the end. Okay. Yeah.
And let's assume you work with Universal Quantum as an example. You only work with one hardware, or you have to look into various machines. How does this collaboration work with the machine manufacturer?
So we work with different hardware providers and also test our algorithms on different hardware, because we cannot really predict which hardware will be best or useful for what we're doing in the future. So it's a way of de-risking, you can say, okay, is to test our algorithms on different hardware.
Nice.
Yeah.
Maybe, Christina, you also have a few more applications or example clients where you are active in which industries?
Yeah, definitely. So our main focus is drug discovery, where we build software to simulate the specific binding of targets to potential drugs. And that's where we also really see a good use case for quantum in the future, where we believe quantum computing will bring extra precision to those specific bindings that are necessary to simulate in order to do drug discovery well.
Thank you. Marta, I also need a few more examples from the real world, right? Also for the audience, right? Quantum seems for some very far away and not touchable. Like, what are typical clients from your side? Where do you have real use cases, and where, in the end, also does quantum make a difference?
Yeah, no, I like the question because, I given examples of clients and things that we're doing, applications, make it more tangible and more real, no? So for example, I'm going to give you an example. We have a manufacturer client that has, factories across the globe. We're working with this particular one in Spain, and it's a very digitalized factory. They collect thousands of samples and variables and things. But what was important for this manufacturer was, okay, I produce sensors for cars and airplanes, and I have these robots on a production line. So when one of these robots is going to collapse or have a failure, how can I anticipate so that I can plan the production, I can stop the production and fix the machines, many critical decisions. So we're working with this customer on this particular application. We are actually deploying our software on premises. But what is interesting, I think, is that these same algorithms that we're using for predictive maintenance in robots on a production line, we're using with this football team in Basque Country. If you like football, you probably have heard of Real Sociedad. They came to us with a very similar problem. We didn't know, obviously, but instead of robots, they have football players, right? But they collect samples of these football players, how they sleep, what they eat, medical data, everything that you can imagine, very heterogenic. But it was exactly the same. I'm going to put this football player to play a game. What are the chances of this person having an injury? Exactly the same algorithm. And just for you to see another example, which is more on the life side, so manufacturing, life. We are in discussions with this hospital in Spain. It's a very, again, digitalized hospital with IC units where they have, critical patients. And again, they have thousands of variables collected from these patients. And what's important for the doctors is, how can I anticipate to a crisis? How do I know what patient might have a crisis in the next 15 minutes or so? So it's exactly the same algorithm, but we're using in different applications. So I'm happy that I have the opportunity to explain because it's more tangible than you can think. Obviously, we're using quantum and hybrid methods, but we are already working with customers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Question to all of you, right? What are some near-term advancements going into the markets? Like, what is the potential of quantum that you see for the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, rather? That's more realistic for all of us. And then I also want to have the big question: where are we in 2050, in the next 30 years?
I can start from a hardware perspective. I think when we pull this scaling off, 5 to 10 years is when our sort of machines will reach the scale that we will unlock the applications we all dream about. Right? I think we're making that move now. I know for a long time it's like, quantum 10, 20 years away. I think we're getting into that time frame now where we will reach a scale where we can, we no longer have to squeeze the ice and be like, and maybe there's pockets of value here or there. We will, have real utility coming out of quantum computers, and I think this is why we're seeing that momentum gearing up, and I think it is important that we continue to scale, but as long as that happens, as we for Universal Quantum at least are planning it, 5 to 10 years is exactly that time scale that we're looking at.
Okay. And then, after 5 to 10 years, you're in a scaling method. What then?
Yeah.
It's very complicated for all of us to understand disruptive technology. What can happen after then? Right. Do you have a moonshot idea where we are in 2050?
I think this is hard, right? I think what might be a surprise is that if quantum computing plays out the way many of us believe it will be at the foundation of most things you will touch on a regular level, right? It may be the drug that saves people's lives that wouldn't have been possible without quantum. It will be in the digital world. It will be across the we're seeing applications across all major sectors, right? It really gets so deeply rooted into it. And I had a conversation earlier with someone around, is it B2B, B2C? Do we see a sort of ChatGPT moment? But I think the way we at least view it is that what we as a hardware player are doing is we're giving humanity a tool to then do really amazing things with, right? So it's then up to some of the people on the panel here, you guys, to take that, be creative, be imaginative, and really use this to transform the world we're living in. And I think this is the sort of step change that we're talking about here. We're not talking about making something 5% better or 10% better. This is a completely new revolutionary technology that will change things profoundly. But it is also up to you guys to use it in the way that you see fit. So we're providing the tool, and then, let's go crazy.
Or you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Yes, so in terms of the short-term goals for the whole industry, we're trying to achieve the moment where quantum computers a quantum computer can solve a problem that we think is fundamentally impossible for the world's largest supercomputer. You might have seen in the news articles, in the newspapers, that they mention, Google achieved quantum supremacy and so on. Currently, we're at the stage that we're dancing around that line that somebody thinks we achieved it, and somebody finds a better way to do it with a supercomputer and so on. I expect in the next few years to really have some really strong results that show the quantum computer is very useful for some very selected problems. Of course, later for that, then we're going to have very useful problems, because one is a selected problem that you choose to make your computer look good, and the other one is a problem that's useful for somebody. And I'm very excited, for example, applications in chemistry, which he kind of hinted. And then it's very simple to explain why quantum computers are so good for chemistry. If you think of a chemist, you think of somebody with a lab coat, wearing glasses, mixing liquids in front of a very expensive lab, right? This is somebody with probably a doctorate that's doing a lot of very well-informed trial and error. It's very expensive to do discovery of materials and chemistry through this method. The reason is that calculating the fundamental properties of a molecule is impossible for current supercomputers. It's just very, very hard to do. However, for a quantum computer, it's exponentially better. And when I say exponential, I don't mean as a superlative of it's much better. I mean literally exponentially better. You can solve molecules you couldn't solve before. So the dream is, like in some years, the industries like pharma, chemistry, they will be completely transformed. There's going to be more people like me and driving innovation, not just the people with the lab coats, for example. So this really, like the big vision of quantum is going to be transformative for discovery. And of course, finally, there's going to be an impact to consumers. I call that the moment with my mom's cell phones cause a quantum computer, for example. I think that's probably going to be 2050. That's much, much farther in the future.
Thanks. Christina?
Yeah, I think in the near term, as I mentioned, I think the benefit from quantum computing will be additional precision. And similar to what you said, César, I think the real use cases there are within chemistry. That could be drug discovery, where we are working. It could be material sciences. It could be battery development, helping the green transition. I think that's realistic for the near term, adding that precision. Then over time, I think it will both add precision and speed. That will take longer time. In terms of moonshot guesses, I think it would be wonderful if quantum computing could help push a completely new way of doing drug discovery. So today we basically take an average of a subset of the population and do simulations based on that average, both on the computer and in the laboratory. Over time, it would be super cool if quantum computers could help really simulate the individual body environments of each individual, and thereby be smarter around the drug development before we need to test it on real humans. So really pushing the agenda of precision or personalized medicine. I think quantum computing in the long term can help on that agenda.
Thank you. Marta, final words.
Yeah, I was going to copy something that one of our co-founders said, Romano Rose. He always says that, in 2050, we can't even start to imagine what these computers will be able to do, right? Maybe we don't even have the idea now. It will happen when they, reach that capacity. But at the same time, I wanted to say that we don't have to wait for the term quantum supremacy. There are maybe particular applications and optimization for certain things that we can start extracting business value now. There's no point in waiting for the quantum supremacy. But for example, just a quick example of something that we have been able to develop with our quantum-inspired hybrid approach. We have been able, for example, to come up with this product called Kvantify that compresses an LLM, a large LLM, up to 6% of each capacity. So that opens a new array of possibilities. You don't have to retrain it with access on the cloud. You can do it on premises. So there are things that you can do now. But yeah, in 2050, oof, imagine.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. If you have questions, reach out to us directly and enjoy Latitude, the last day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.